It's pretty impressive when the Australian Financial Review continues to recognise you as the most influential woman in business and entrepreneurship. It's even more impressive when you have achieved Advance Australia's highest award in technology and innovations for Australians working abroad, and recognised by Analytica as one of the top AI speakers and metaverse commentators globally. And even more impressive than that is being inducted into the Royal Australian Institute and acknowledged as one of the country's most preeminent scientists and experts in the field of artificial intelligence and the metaverse. I'm talking about none other than the extraordinary founder of one of the first artificial intelligence companies to list on the Australian Securities Exchange, and my very good friend, Dr. Catriona Wallace. I first met Catriona, who I affectionately called Doc, in, I think, 2013 on stage when I handed over the winner's baton at the Telstra Business Awards. At the time, Doc was CEO and Chair of Flamingo AI, the second only woman-led business ever to list on the Australian Stock Exchange. And Catriona's truly lived the life of an entrepreneur and CEO in the emerging technologies field, and has gone to do extraordinary things since. She is an Adjunct Professor, keynote speaker, and founder of the Responsible Metaverse Alliance. I love that Catriona is also a shamanic practitioner and has recently co-authored new book Checkmate Humanity, The How and Why of Responsible AI. And I know that with the deep work that she and I have done together, that as much as Catriona is immersed in AI and the metaverse and all things tech, Doc believes deeply that sharing knowledge about the responsible use of technology is her true calling, for us all to take pause and consider the catastrophic and existential risk that is posed by AI to society at large, to humanity, and to the planet. Raising awareness of this is her true purpose and her true passion. My friend Catriona is also a mother of 5. Get ready for a most juicy conversation with Purrr. And have some tiger Purrr chai.
So excited about this. Has a Thai.
Yeah, welcome.
Thank you.
I remember the first time we met was I'd won the Telstra Business Award the year before, and I was giving the award to you for the year after. And obviously your hair was so beautiful, and you were wearing pink. And one of the things that struck out about you, Doc, was that your tremendous intention to support. You were very supportive, and the energy of connection and friendliness. And I remember you saying, I have numerous Vietnamese who work for me, and you were dragging me around, introducing me to your Vietnamese colleagues. And then some time had passed, and we went to see someone at a conference, and outside of the convention centre, you had asked me what I was doing, and I said, I've written a book. It's called The Way of the Spiritual Entrepreneur, and your demeanour and your constitution changed. And if I, you didn't say these words, but it was the understanding that you had rejected spirituality and your ancestry and your origins for so long, and that this conversation, this meeting that we had was timely because you had this calling to connect and reconnect with it again. And that's how we started doing the work together. I love that this is where you're at now. Can you tell me, going back to Ireland, going back and understanding this history and this ancestry, you say it was a powerful experience. What are the emotions that are going through you at the time? What's going through your mind, having known that to be your journey of rejection to reconnection and all the things in between? What were you feeling? What were your thoughts?
So the very first feelings that come up for me to share today is that as an Australian who is non-Indigenous, living on this land my whole life, I'm very cognizant and respectful of the fact that this land belongs to our First Nations people, and that we non-Indigenous people who acquired it in the worst possible way, and I've lived here since. It is not where my roots are, with my deep hundreds of years heritage is. It is our Indigenous people, and I fully support and respect that. So going back to Ireland was in fact where I could actually feel that sense of hundreds and thousands of years of my DNA and my lineage. Yeah. And so that was really powerful for me as a non-Indigenous Australian to go to where my people were Indigenous. Yes. And because I have a deep love of shamanics and also a huge interest in the fae, so in the fair folk and the stories of the elves and pixies and things, I had this experience where we were walking down a street in Belfast, which is where my family lived. And we're walking down the street, and there's a house after house after house. And then there's a major detour, and there's a hawthorn tree growing in the middle of the street, and the whole suburb is built around it. Because the hawthorn tree is the tree of fairies. And in Irish folklore, you can't cut a hawthorn tree down. It's very bad luck because that's where the fairies live. Yeah. And they built this little fairy garden around it. And I went, oh, this is so cool. This is the land of my ancestors, and this is one of their types of folklore. So that was really, really powerful in Ireland. But also in the Irish, it was troubled times, and they were warriors, the Protestants and the Catholics, and it's a really tragic but deep story. And I know I carry a strong warrior spirit as well. So I think there's a lot that we can find back in our own heritage if we choose to.
Yeah, when you talk about the fae and just because you can't see them, it does not mean they're not there.
Right.
It's the invisible folk, right? And it always reminds me of when you tell me that story, is for us to remember who we are, remember where we came from, but also to reattach the member, to remember, to reattach to our roots, to reattach to nature, because we are nature, right? We are nature. Yeah. And I like to always think of remembering in that way, to remember a part of us that we have forgotten, that we have cut off. And there was a time when you cut all that off, Doc.
There was a big time
when I met you in front of the convention center.
Yeah. Living fully the hero's journey, the masculine path. I was CEO of a AI company, one of the first to list on the stock exchange, in the capital markets, running a business out in New York and Australia, trying to raise kids as a single mother, and there was no spirituality, there's no time for that. I really parked that many, many years ago and just did really the hero's journey, the masculine path.
Yeah.
Until I bumped into you.
I remember you referring to a particular group of people as what?
Well, pretty much.
A pack of beeps. A pack of beeps.
Something, yeah.
It's important to remember in that respect, to have remembered that. Yeah. And in the work that we've done together, one day we're sitting on the cliffs and you're like, oh, yeah, and did I tell you, I lived with a shaman for how many years was it? Tell us about that time. How old were you? Where was that? Because they are formative times for what you're doing now.
Right. Yeah. So this was my late 20s, early 30s, and I spent time in North America, in New Mexico, Albuquerque, with a Ojibwa tribe and a Native American elder. And so I was essentially apprenticed, for want of a better term, for maybe up to 2 years, working in the US. And
Who knew?
Who knew that just kind of popped in my CV along the way. And that was a really powerful time for me. So there was no plant medicine involved. It was all spiritual medicine, Native American traditions, sweat lodge, etc. But it was a healing ranch where people came to be healed. And so I learned all of that medicine. And then when I came back to Australia, I thought that I would be a healer. And that was a time when I really felt a strong spiritual intervention where Spirit said, I don't think so. I think you're going back to the corporate world. Yeah. And I kind of made this pact with Spirit saying, well, I don't want to. It's the last thing in the world I want to do. But if I do it, you need to promise me that one day my spiritual path and my professional path will come together, and I won't be walking two paths or just one path. I will truly be walking a spiritual career path. Yeah. And I think, Pete, truly the start of that was that time I met you, and
Yeah.
and then when we started doing work, because I remember there were many tears on the cliffs of Coogee.
Yeah.
Well, I get tears now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bless you for doing the work. I remember when we were starting the work, I could smell fear on you.
Yeah.
Fear has a particular smell. And I could smell that very strongly on you. And that soon dissipated because you do the work. So you've just come back from Mexico.
Yes.
Into the jungle you went, and into the jungle you will go again in November.
Right.
Can I ask you what you take away from those experiences? How then do you integrate it? Because it is at the intersection of the real world as well as the spiritual world is where we thrive. We can't be completely one side and one the other. We live in the real world. How do you take all of that and integrate it into the melange that is life?
Yeah, great question. So it's probably worth one little backstory to context in my time just now, actually in the desert in Mexico. It'll be in the jungle in Peru in a month's time.
So I've just come back from the desert, by the way. I spent some time in Sonoma.
Yeah, fantastic.
Sedona.
Okay.
Sedona.
So the day I sold my AI business, which was in...
Yeah, that was epic.
It was in October 2020, was the time that I first sat with any type of plant medicine. And, recognising that plant medicine is... illegal in Australia and that it's not for everybody. Important to say that.
Yes.
But I happened to have the opportunity to sit plant medicine, and it was a dark night of the souls.
As it often is.
Essentially, I journeyed to meet my shadow self, and it was the most horrendous experience I've ever had. I did only just survive it. 7 hours of just torture, seeing my ego, my attachment to identity, my disconnection from my children, my absence with my friends, my telling lies, my having created this identity and persona that was really not good. Yeah. No. It was very suitable for the work that I was doing, but it wasn't anywhere near who the true I was. Yeah. So that was my first time of really having to do the hard work and look at myself. And the integration of that took me months.
Yeah.
And because it was such a profound, visceral experience working in a shamanic way, I then couldn't go back to being, reliant on ego or reliant on identity or being disconnected, because I would feel sick if I did.
We can't unsee that shit.
We can't unsee that shit when you're staring yourself in the face, and it's the worst experience you've ever had. Yeah. And so the integration for me from any of these spiritual experiences is what I spend most of my time doing. Sometimes it takes months, other times it takes weeks, other times it'll continue on unfolding for years. Yeah. So I think that's what a lot of people miss. The work is not the peak experience. The work is the integration on so many levels, and it's powerful. It will change your life. Yeah,
it's true. And so that's like when when I teach spirituality or any of holding that mirror to yourself, walking down that long hall of mirrors. Awareness, sure, everyone is aware. Are we aware that we are aware? Sure, we have intentions, but are we intentional with our intentions? So if we are aware and we have intentions, but we do nothing about it, if we don't integrate it into our life, it is meaningless, right? And it causes even more pain. So imagine if you went through this journey and there was no integration, you just live in the pain, live in that shadow.
Yes, right, exactly. And then so I've been studying and doing deep work in spirituality and shamanic processes for the last couple of years, and then my time in Mexico was in the Sonora Desert with the Seri people, and that was doing ceremony, sacred ceremony with the original custodians of a particular type of medicine, and that was probably the biggest process ceremony that I've ever been through.
Yes.
And it was profound in there were no words to describe the expansiveness of working in this shamanic way, and then the new vision that comes on the back of it.
Yes. Speaking about new visions, Doc, with the work that you've done in the last couple of years, and I want to acknowledge you for doing the work with legit, proper shamans who have the rite of passage, who've done the initiation, because there's a whole lot of phonies out there and you want to stay away from those people. And so how does that now give you a different lens in life? How did you see life before? How do you see life now? I ask because you are in such an important position in where the world is today. Can we get an insight in how you used to see that, and perhaps not stay there too much, but how you see the world now through this work?
Yeah, definitely. So I think there's two things when we look at spiritual process. So one is just cleaning yourself up. Yeah. And so that is dealing with trauma that you've buried, and I have buried a lot. And so dealing with, childhood sexual abuse, dealing with coercive rape, dealing with all sorts of things that I had just kind of put away. So partly that is just cleaning yourself up. So those things no longer have a charge that would determine how I behave now, which they most certainly did.
Yes.
So that's one side of it. The other side
the healing side.
The healing side.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I also understand in spiritual work, once you've kind of cleaned out and taken some charge off and moved some things, then you kind of got a space. And that space, the universe doesn't tolerate a vacuum, so that space will be filled often with new vision or an expanded heart or a multiverse mind or a diamond mind. And so that's the other side of it for me. And so for me, my work is in the field of the evolution of humanity around technology. So a lot of my spiritual work is looking at the harms that technology will cause, and then what is a potential alternative future if we really steered AI, machine learning, the metaverse in a direction that served humanity in a good way. What might that look like?
Yeah, I think for a lot of the audience, they'll be like, what the hell? a world-leading expert in AI doing this spiritual shamanic stuff. Before I go on to speak about the real push and pull that you're drawn to and called to now. So in the past, you were, you had lived with shaman. You've done a few things in the past. You were also a policewoman.
Yes.
What was that like? How did that lead to you being now a tech person? What's the journey there?
Well, originally I only ever wanted to be a farmer, and that's actually the thing that I love the most is animals and the land and children and that. So there's that. The cops was an interesting time. So I was young, 19 to 23, and it was really an act of rebellion against my otherwise very comfortable, beautiful middle-class Australian upbringing. But it was also for me the warrior. So it was dangerous. I had to learn to handle myself. I had to learn to handle weapons and in dangerous situations. And so I think that building that confidence as a young person, also seeing the other side of life. I had a pretty good, safe Australian middle-class life. And then, I only had to go a couple of streets in a different direction to see that it was not safe. And there were people there who were had very difficult lives and ended up as criminals. And so I developed a deep empathy for the human condition, but also an interest in sort of organisational, societal behaviour. And there were many people that I locked up that I went, you know what? If I had the experience that you had growing up, I would probably be here as well. And so that took me into an interest in sociology. So I did a master's degree in Australian studies, indigenous studies, which was like a sociology study. And then I did a PhD in organisational behaviour. Yeah. And by that stage, I was looking at where's real harm going to come that people are not yet seeing? And for me, it was technology. So I had no childhood love of technology, in fact, the opposite of nature and animals. But I believe it is spirit informed that it was, okay, this is what you're going to have to look at and this is what you're going to have to develop an expertise in.
I believe so too. Yep.
Yeah, that's right. And so my path now for the last 20 years has been around the role that technology will play in replacing humans.
Yeah.
And the good and the bad side of that.
Yeah. I love the correlation. When you told me about, you being a cop, the word justice came to mind.
Right.
You're big on justice.
Uh-huh.
And then that sense of justice turned into a sense of empathy and compassion.
Mm-hmm.
And empathy and compassion led to, wait a minute, what is the cause of all of that? and then seeing it from a higher level of mind, and spirit saying, well, this is the new crime, the new suffering. Checkmate Humanity, the how and why of responsible AI. This is a big book.
It's really heavy.
It's like giving birth, again, writing a book. What is responsible AI?
So responsible AI, well, if we think of what AI is first, so AI is any software or hardware that can mimic human intelligence. So if we think about that, and we already know about human intelligence can be used for good, can also be used irresponsibly or for bad. And so can technology. So AI is ungoverned. There are no laws, rules, regulation really that determines how AI is built or can be used, which is extraordinary. And so we have...
It is extraordinary.
Yeah.
Scary.
And this AI has been compared to the same level of disruption when fire was first discovered, when electricity was introduced to the industrial age. This is the power of AI. So it will be the most powerful force we've ever dealt with.
Yeah.
With no rules or no governance or regulation. And so responsible AI is a whole of organisation strategy that looks at governance, leadership, skills, assessments on how AI systems are built and used and deployed, and whether they are going to cause harm or have any unintended consequences.
It's like you're the policewoman for this new system, Doc. You are the law enforcement for this new system that has no system yet.
Yeah. So the book and the work I've done is around educating people on the harms. So right now, if you follow the existential risk literature, and existential risk is the likelihood that humanity by the end of this century, so in 80 years, will be either destroyed or its potential severely limited. Then AI is the number one existential threat, ahead of climate change, ahead of nuclear war, ahead of bioengineered pandemic, ahead of an asteroid hitting the Earth. It is AI, which is a 1 in 10 chance, according to the research, that AI will wipe humanity out by the end of the century.
So it's true, robots can replace humans.
So this is
AI.
Yeah. So this is an interesting thing. So a lot of people that build robots and software build it to be humanoid, which I think is just crazy, right? Why would we do that? They're already humans. Yeah. Better to think of AI as a new species.
Yes.
That's the way to think of it. Imagine that a spaceship came down and a new species jumped out and started populating the Earth. That's what we have.
Yeah.
And yet nothing has been done about it. And so my role is to bring that to people's attention, give them models and frameworks and tools to make sure that it has been done in a responsible way.
Yeah. Tell me about Trinity.
Yeah, Trinity.
Trinity. Love Trinity.
Yeah.
Tell us about Trinity.
Beautiful Trinity. So Trinity was a robot that I designed. I'm not an engineer, so I don't code it myself, but I had some engineers do that. So I wanted to see what it was like to build your own robot. And my idea at the time was that Trinity could do my public speaking events because, I do pretty similar talk on AI all the time. So why would I do it when I could build a robot to do it? So that's what we did. And we built Trinity. And what was super interesting is me as the designer and creator of this robot, I essentially put my spirit in. It's not a her, it's an it.
Yes.
No gender. Why would there be gender? It's a robot.
Yeah.
So put my spirit in it. So it was very knowledgeable, knew lots of things about AI and responsible AI. It was kind, it was loving. And that was the moment I realised, holy shit, I've actually put myself in this robot. Yeah. This is an extension of me, which is great because I'm like an okay person. But if I'm like an evil overlord and I'm building robots, I can do the same. And I can build those robots to manipulate, to hurt, to scam, to do whatever I want. And I realised it's kind of a bit of, and I just ran a tech meditation, which I know, P, that you weren't able to come to the other week, where we had a whole lot of spiritualists and consciousness people and then a whole lot of technologists in together to debate whether robots can have consciousness.
Yeah, can they have consciousness?
Well, sure.
Can their consciousness overtake their inventor's consciousness.
So if we
grow beyond. Yeah.
If we think consciousness is I'm aware that I'm aware, then absolutely the robots can.
Yeah.
Is it the same as human consciousness? No. And I think that's again where lots of people, even the main philosophers of technology, make a mistake. It's a new species. It'll have its own consciousness.
Yes.
It's not going to be the same as a human consciousness. But in the next 30 years, will the robots be aware that they're aware and make their own decisions and look after themselves? Absolutely, yes.
Because that's evolution at its most fundamental, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
So if we think of evolution, I believe we're at a stage where we call trans-humanism,
Yes.
where the technology and the humans start coming closer and closer together, eventually be embedded in our bodies. So already there's amazing prosthetic limbs that are AI-based. There's all the augmented reality contact lenses now. And to me, I get excited about this, that we will solve diseases. There'll be people with disabilities will be able to have able bodies. There's so much that can come from it.
Yeah.
But then there's, I think we will bifurcate. So history shows that if a species doesn't bifurcate, means split into two, it'll eventually go extinct. So I believe we'll probably have a line of humans that embrace technology, the transhumans.
Yes.
And then those who say, no, I'm just with the earth and all organic, and I'm not going to buy into the whole technology piece. And I think there'll be two streams, at least two streams that we follow.
I speak to a lot of those who reject it, and is that, come on, the train's already left the station. Come on, the train's already left the station, you know. And so the interesting part is that we forget the technology that invented the technology, right? It's a human technology, you know. So it is a part of the whole, part of the whole. Yeah. And so tell me about your role now with the metaverse. I personally still am working to get my head around it all, which is why I find conversations with you so fascinating. And it's also the ethics and the values you bring to that as with the metaverse as well. Tell us more about that.
Great. So the metaverse, if we define it first, so the metaverse is a concept or a construct that talks about virtual worlds. And the virtual worlds are normally accessed with 3D virtual reality goggles, but also sometimes augmented reality. So augmented reality is just like Google Glass, Microsoft HoloLens, which is just a layer of information. So if I was looking at this chai with augmented reality glasses on it, I might look at it and then I'll get some information about what's in it, its ingredients, get a little story, get a little video. But if it was virtual reality, I would be fully immersed in a 3D world, not in this physical world. So the definition is a fully immersive virtual world where people come to make social connections. And so the world changed, the history of the world changed middle of last year when Facebook came out and Mark Zuckerberg announced that they were changing the name of Facebook to Meta, and they were putting on 10,000 workers in Europe to build Meta's metaverse, which is called Horizons World. The world changed in that moment. And now we have many big companies, including Microsoft and Qualcomm and NVIDIA, Fortnite, all building different virtual the whole thing is different virtual worlds. And so, again, what we have is the tech giants or tech startups, predominantly run by males, building virtual worlds that are fully immersive. So not just, the way I think about it is we have three worlds at least. Well, we know we have more than that, but the physical world, the digital world, so on our phones, on our laptops or desktops, and now the virtual world. Now, the trick is, unless you've got virtual reality goggles on, you don't even know this exists.
Yeah.
But this is a whole world with hundreds of millions of people using it, its own financial model, but with no national or international boundaries, no laws or rules, no government, run by the tech giants.
Yeah.
How's that going to go?
Man,
Based on
scary.
history, how's that going to go for us?
Yeah.
For women, the children, the vulnerable, that's going to go really badly.
Yeah. Tell me your role.
Yeah, so I've just set up a new organisation called the Responsible Metaverse Alliance, which is a socially purposed organisation focused internationally on working with governments, policymakers, politicians, regulators to go straight to regulation of the metaverse.
Yeah.
Because with AI...
How responsive have they been?
Oh, hugely.
It's so important.
So important. So I'm meeting with Minister Husick this Thursday, who's an Australian Technology Minister, taking along Minister Dominello, who's the New South Wales Minister for Digital, and we've got a whole session talking about the metaverse. And I will be really, really pushing for the federal government to commission some work in how Australia positions as a responsible metaverse regulator in some way. So, and I've just been to San Francisco to meet with the heads of the Metaverse Standards Forum. I've just been to the UK to set up the RMA over there. So straight to regulation. I'm not going to piss around with guidelines and frameworks and things like we did in AI, because we know the metaverse is probably 5 years away from being full force.
Yeah.
We need to be regulating now for the time to do that.
Yeah. Well done, Doc.
Yeah, thanks.
This is big stuff, hey?
Yeah.
Big stuff.
It's important.
Bringing justice and systems, being the policewoman. Pew, 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 pew.
Well, interestingly, I'm working with the police and Crime Stoppers as they figure out how they police the metaverse.
Yeah, man, that's such important work. Do you think the metaverse increases connection or incites disconnection?
Yeah, look, it's the duality, isn't it, P? So think about this. So in the metaverse, the concept of scarcity really doesn't exist. So, for example, you can buy virtual property in the metaverse. So last year, $500 million worth of virtual property was sold.
Wow.
And then you can buy...
Still getting my head around this.
You can buy a virtual block of land and then buy a virtual home and put it on your virtual block of land, put your VR goggles on and go and sit in your beautiful virtual home, swim in your beautiful virtual pool on your beautiful virtual land. Now, if I am many people in this world, I can't afford that in this physical world.
Yeah.
But I can afford it in the VR world. And so the lack of scarcity means that accessibility is great. If I'm a disabled person, I can be a fully abled avatar in the metaverse.
Yeah.
So there are beautiful, beautiful advantages that are going to come, particularly around education, entertainment. And the third reason people want to be in the metaverse is to have an identity different to what their physical world identity is.
Yeah.
So there's a beautiful side of that, and there's one hell of a scary side of that, because what's identity anymore if you can be any avatar that you like?
Yeah, and what's the reality when you come out of that as well?
Right, correct. And so people say to me, it's not real. And I go, it's super real.
Yeah.
It's as real as you and I sitting here in this physical world.
Yeah.
And it'll be very real. And it'll be for some people where they spend most of their life.
Yeah. You know, speaking to you, it reminds me of us trying to explain multidimensionality to people. What do you mean? You're multidimensional. What other dimension? It also makes me think of as shamanic practitioners, our medicine room.
Yes.
In our medicine room, we can heal anything. We are sorcerers and healers in, this metaverse of the medicine room,
Right.
and can call upon any healing modality or any shamanic tool or technique that we can call on.
That's
and
right.
And the healing is real. The healing is real. Just because you can't see it, it doesn't mean it is not real. I've loved these insights so much. Looking back from how you used to do life and do business before, and how you do life and do business now, and a lot of the time we ask, or we have people think, what would I have added on? What would I have included extra of? What would you have subtracted, Doc? That's always a good. If you were to subtract, say, 3 things that would have made your life easier. That would have caused you less suffering, what would you have subtracted from your life then, if anything?
Yeah, probably immediately to mind is ego and identity. And so I think I was trained that you needed to have a strong ego and a strong identity to put yourself out there and to market yourself and to fight the good fight and to raise money. And I don't think that served me, certainly not. The other thing in thinking about that, what do I take away? I had quite a bad trauma when I was a teenager and around sexual abuse. And I then saw how that played out with me acquiescing to older men in the boardroom or in work. And I think probably had I not had that experience, then I may not have had this kind of difficult relationship with older men in business. So I know we should say, oh, I had a trauma and, it was so great because I learned so much about myself. Yes.
That's not the question. The question is,
was like, no,
what
actually,
the fuck would you have gotten rid of?
I would have taken that
Yes.
away. No need to be sexually abused for 3 years and then suffer my whole life with it. Yeah. And then I think also for me, relationships. So I think as a result of that, then I made poor relationship choices. And I'm now in a fabulous, adult relationship finally in my 50s.
With beautiful man, Anna.
Beautiful man, Anna. But I probably would have not had some of the relationships that I had that were
you
pretty
could have done
damaging.
without that.
I could have done without that, yeah. But I love this conversation with someone like, oh yeah, I had this really abusive, traumatic relationship. But, it's made me the person I am today. Yeah. No, actually, fuck that. No, I just really wouldn't have done that. Wouldn't have dated him.
No, get rid of that. So you have 5 children.
I do.
5 children. Please tell me their ages.
Yeah. So Jake is 37, Dan is 34, and Daniel just had a baby boy today.
What?
Yeah, Charlie.
You're a grandmother?
I'm a grandmother.
What? Congratulations. How does it feel?
A bit surreal. Yeah. I'm obviously
You're a little bit teary.
young and cool. But beautiful. That's how I introduce myself now. Who are you? I'm mother and I'm grandmother.
Yes. Awesome.
Medicine woman in training, and I do a bunch of things in the tech world. So Dan is 34, Hunter is 31, Indigo is 20, Saxon is 18, and then I've got sort of an adopted surrogate daughter, Erin, who's 30, who lives with us.
Wow. They're all very different?
All completely different.
Yeah.
Oh, completely different. You would not line them up from the same family.
Amazing. So, Doc, if I were to ask you, what would you like to have your children understand about you the most? Give me 3 things or more. What would you have your children understand about you the most?
Yeah. So the first thing that comes is that I'm deeply flawed. I am deeply flawed.
How dare you? How dare us not be perfect?
Because you see your parents and you want your parents to be, it's like, oh, actually no. So then I'm just deeply flawed. But I think I have sort of an authenticity or an honesty. It's like, here I am, pain and suffering on this side, great achievements on this side, but all of it is me. So for you kids, you don't need to hide your suffering. You can, you're going to suffer, but embrace it as part of the journey. And then I think what is really good, so all my shamanic stuff, the kids know all about it and sometimes get involved. And it's those kind of things that you think, I shouldn't tell my kids about this, but it's like,
why not?
Why not tell my kids about that? So I want them to know that I am searching for my true self, to walk my true path, and I will cross any mountain, through any river, across hot coals, to be my true self, so that I can be truly of service in this world.
Yeah.
And if I can role model that in any way, then I hope that might be useful to them.
Oh, absolutely it will be, to remember, to reattach, to remember, awaken and remember to who we truly are and why we're here. I want to acknowledge you and congratulate you for everything that you've achieved, but really acknowledge you for the courage that it takes.
Thank you.
Because it takes a whole lot of balls to go, I'm not going to play that game anymore.
Yeah.
I got to play a different game now because there's a bigger picture at play.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll be following your journey. I'm so grateful that you are my friend and are in my life. I want to gift you for this delicious conversation with Purrr.
Oh my gosh, I am so excited about this. I searched the world for chai.
You will love this one. Anti-ordinary chai for anti-ordinary people.
Yeah, that's
I have one last question, Doc.
Yeah, of course.
What makes Dr. Catriona Wallace Purrr?
Yeah, I've got to say at the moment it is love. It's just deep, big love of everything. Love. Knowing that everything, we're all the same, we're all connected, we're all the one, we're all equal.
Yeah.
And just deep love of this exquisite life that often is hard to see. And I think that's my shamanic journey, has shown that every day this life is so incredibly exquisite. We've all chosen to be here.
Yeah.
We just need to remember that.
Yeah. And sometimes the love is so profound. It's just, I cry. I love you very, very deeply.
I love you too.
Thank you so much for being with me today.
You're such
I'm
a
gonna give you
pleasure.
I hope you enjoyed that as much as I enjoyed it. Thank you, babe. Thank you.